Several years ago, a man I know was told he was dying, which of course we all are. But his death was sooner than he had anticipated. Though well off, he'd always been very miserly, very cheap, to the frustration of his wife, who wanted them to travel and see things and visit their children and grandchildren scattered across the country, and all those important things that aren't cheap but immensely rewarding. Facing death, though, his priorities changed, and he made a bucket list of things he'd always wanted to do but didn't feel he could afford, like buying gifts for his friends and family, home improvements, making sure his wife had a new car to drive after he was gone, eating out more, going to concerts and enjoying music. Unfortunately, if that's the right word for it, during the course of more medical tests, it was discovered a mistake had been made. He wasn't dying, and he went back to being stingy. His wife told me, "We had such fun when we thought he was dying." This is not a unique experience. Whenever we think life is about to radically change, we often feel liberated to do things we never would have considered. There are some Bible scholars, actually many, who believe the Apostle Paul's openness to female participation in the early church was due to his belief that the world was coming to an end, so he felt freer to rewrite the cultural rules that had heretofore guided him. He wrote about it in the church to Galatia, this expansive view. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is neither male nor female. You are all one in Christ Jesus. Like Paul, early Quakers, early Friends also believed Jesus would soon be returning and the world as they knew it would be ending. Like Paul, they felt freer to open the gates, welcoming those who had previously not been welcomed, investing power in those who had never held power, especially women and people of color. What we do not know, what we cannot know, although probably Tom Ham would know now that I think about it, is whether early Friends would have been so eager for change if they had thought those changes would be permanent. After all, anybody can be flexible for a little while. Okay, we can do this. We won't be around much longer. Kind of like the way I do home repairs. I'm not going to live in this house forever. That'll do. It's important to note that other people, when they sense their world is ending, do not experience the freedom to rewrite the rules and expand their world, but instead wanting to be found righteous and faithful to the end, double down on their rules, harden their beliefs, rigidly enforcing their principles all the more. God is watching us. We must stand strong in the face of these temptations. So they just dig in. Now, whether Friends swung open the gates because of a sincere conviction about the sin of exclusion, or because they thought any changes they made would be temporary, whatever their reason, I'm glad they did what they did. We talked for a while about things early Quakers got wrong. So now, as we consider the things they got right, let's add to that list their inclusion of those persons the church had never included. Their decision to value equality and inclusion over cultural norms and tired traditions. And let me tell you, that's hard to do when your culture is going one way and you say, no, we're going to go another way. That is a very difficult thing to do. We continue today the Quaker tradition of inclusion in our welcome of gay people, in our welcome of people of color. The fastest growing segment now in the world of Quakerism is people of color. We continue the Quaker tradition of inclusion in our welcome of trans people, in our welcome of the elderly as well as the young, in our welcome of the poor as well as the wealthy, of the politically traditional as well as the politically progressive, of dog people and cat people, which might be the most radical inclusion of all. Too often, when we open the gates wide to everyone, we think we are doing them a favor and pat ourselves on the back for our broad-mindedness. But here's the thing. When we include people who have been excluded, we do ourselves a favor. We do ourselves a favor. Study after study indicates that more diverse communities enjoy higher rates of creativity, production, and innovation, while communities that remain stubbornly unvaried inevitably stagnate and die. In today's cultural worlds, movements for diversity, equality, and inclusion in education and workplaces have been targeted and in some instances even forbidden by the legislatures in some of our more benighted states. This is social suicide. Social suicide. For when voices, perspectives, and races other than our own are excluded, tamped down, or silenced, we deny ourselves the creativity, productivity, and innovation that come with variety and diversity. I can't help but wonder if the explosive growth and vitality of early Friends was due to our robust equality. No group that excludes 50% of the world's population from decision making can thrive, let alone endure. A Fairfield story. I heard this from Rosemary Swift, who's no longer with us, but I'd go visit her and she would regale me with these stories about past days. And she was very old. She might have even been there, I don't know, in 1898. She was up there. And she was the first one who told me about this woman named Sarah Woodard. Our meeting was founded in 1826. It was like every other Quaker meeting in America, an unprogrammed meeting where people gathered in silence. For our first 72 years, that was our pattern of worship in this meeting. We would all sit in silence, and people, men and women, children, would stand and speak as they feel led. In the decades following the Civil War, our church, like many churches, experienced explosive growth. It became difficult to assimilate these new friends into the life of the meeting, to teach them about Quakerism and to foster their spiritual growth. So we decided the time had come to employ our first pastor. It was a woman named Sarah Woodard. As far as I can tell, the first female pastor in Hendricks County. And from what I've read, Sarah Woodard was a force of nature. She belonged to the first graduating class of Earlham College in 1847. Not only was she an excellent teacher and speaker, she was also a gifted organizer who began her ministry at Fairfield at the age of, now, I was thinking for a while at retiring at the age of 65, and then I've written about that and said, if you put up with me, I'm willing to see if we can go. She began her ministry here at the age of 74. At 74, that we continue as a meeting today is due in no small part to her leadership and legacy. Last month, when the Southern Baptists gathered for their annual convention and decided God didn't call women to ministry, I thought immediately of Sarah Woodard and said to myself, oh, yes, she does. Oh, yes, she does. In life, it's the differences that help us thrive. Quaker's inclusion of women transformed Early Friends from a regional movement to a global tide in just a few decades. Many of our earliest missionaries and teachers that were going out and traveling and visiting other countries and continents were women. When we stop including, when we close the gate, we start dying. In our own generation, we're seeing this now, when those Quaker meetings who have shut out gay people teeter near death, void of spirit, dull of mind. So open wide the gates, friends, open wide the gates, not just in our meeting. It does us no good just to do that here. We need to do it in our personal lives also. Seek out, befriend, and welcome those who bring with them the gift of difference, the blessing of variety. For we never know whom God will use to lift the veil of tedium that so often engulfs us. We never know whom God will use to break our bonds and set us free. We never know. So open wide the gates.